rap, I want you to talk about killing somebody on this one. And I say, yo, nah, I wanted to talk about bringing somebody to life on this one. And what I do is a little different from what Dre do, man. So, you know, creative differences. After the Dre thing popped off, you know, I had to come back. You know, I went back to the East Coast. Had to get my business head together. So, you know, I got my own label. Got my album coming out on my own label. So, you know, it was a lot of things I had to do.
Dr. Dre was used to control. He shaped careers, turned hungry voices into platinum-selling machines, and nobody dared challenge his vision. But one day inside the Aftermath studio, the quietest man in the room flipped the whole empire on its head. No yelling, no threats, just silence and one move that made history. That was the day Rakim showed Dre how dangerous he really was.
Dre, you know, he make his kind of music and I like to make my kind. And, you know, we ain't understand how different we was until we got in the studio and started working together. My way, I guess, of talking crap is a little different. You want to tell stories and, I guess, be a little disrespectful. The thing that I always said was like, Dre, man, we been there, done that. I used to always run that by him, thinking he'd catch on, but.
The year was 2000.
So, was it in the 90s when you went to LA to record an album with Dr. Dre?
Nah, it was 2000. 2001.
The year was 2000. Rakim, the man they called the God MC, had just signed to Aftermath Entertainment. This wasn't just a comeback, it was supposed to be his crowning moment. The album, boldly titled Oh My God, had the streets buzzing with anticipation. This was the same lyrical genius who, back in the late 80s, rewrote rhyme structure forever. The man who inspired Nas, Jay-Z, Eminem, and practically every heavyweight lyricist who came after.
He would present a track, 9 times out of 10, he'd be like, I want you to, you know, talk crap on this one. But my way, I guess, of talking crap is a little different.
And now, he was linking up with the most powerful producer of the new millennium. The mastermind behind the Chronic 2001, No One Can Do It Better, and the Slim Shady LP. On paper, this wasn't just history, it was destiny. Dr. Dre had a formula that never failed.
You know, I learned a lot, man, you know, thanks for the opportunity, but I got to get back to New York, man, and, you know.
Dark cinematic beats layered with stories of street life, paranoia, drugs, and gunplay. It was the same recipe that built Death Row, Aftermath, and even launched 50 Cent into superstardom. But Rakim wasn't built to play into anyone's formula. He wasn't some rapper chasing a radio hit. Rakim didn't need to act tough because his toughness came from a different place. When Dre laid out his vision, gun talk, gangsta bravado, violent themes, Rakim just sat back, headphones on, listening in silence. Then, without a word, he stood up, pulled the headphones off, and walked straight out of the studio. No shouting, no back and forth, no fight, just principle. This wasn't about clout, it wasn't about money, it was about truth. Dre wanted Rakim to wear a gangster mask, but Rakim wasn't a costume rapper.
They got a formula, man. Dre been doing what he been doing for years, and you know, if it's not broke, don't fix it.
He refused to spit stories that weren't his. That day, he proved something stronger than a diss track. He proved you can't force authenticity. Rakim didn't curse Dre out, didn't slam the door, he didn't have to. His silence said everything. He was reminding the world that he didn't need Dr. Director. But Dre, in that moment, he needed Rakim. It was God MC versus the formula, and the formula lost. Because Dre's sound was more than just beats. It was a weapon. Heavy bass, dark melodies, street anthems dripping with paranoia and survival. That was his signature. It worked with Snoop, it worked with M, and it turned 50 Cent into a global powerhouse. Dre's formula had built icons, but this time he wasn't dealing with just another hungry rapper. He was facing Rakim.
You know, he'd put on a beat, he'd sit next to me and be like, yo, I want you to talk that on this one. Like, Dre, that's what you say on every track you play, bro. Like, when you gonna let me rhyme on something? Well, I gotta, you know, beef with everybody.
The God MC, the architect, the man who reshaped hip-hop in the late 80s with wisdom, knowledge, and surgical rhyme precision. Rakim didn't come from gangsta rap, he came from enlightenment. He never needed to fake tough talk, never needed a rebrand. His legacy was already cemented in stone. So when he walked into Aftermath, he brought his own concept, his own higher vision, something more universal, more spiritual, more elevated than bullets and block talk.
It was a long ride home. You know what I mean? sitting there, you ask yourself, did I just do the right thing? I just told Dre that you know what I mean?
But Dre, he wanted the same script that worked before, and that's where the fire sparked. God MC versus the formula.
Middle America, a studio gangster.
There's somebody that's not real. They go in the studio and all of a sudden become hard when they used to do dance music.
Dre tried to put Rakim in the same box he'd put everyone else in, but Rakim had already built his own box, and he wasn't about to smash it just to rap about murders he never did, wars he never fought, or enemies he never had.
He was in NWA, and he was a producer.
So Snoop Dogg was never with you?
Nah, he was never with me.
Okay. I know that you're very short on those two names. You have very little to say.
Talk about them all day. I mean, I make money from Dre and Snoop. So basically, you could diss me all you want, but I'm gonna get paid. That's why I say Dre Day is only Easy's payday, and that's real.
Why don't y'all just make up?
He already made up. You ain't never seen him with the lipstick and
Oh, no, I mean, no.
When Dre slid him a beat drenched in paranoia and gunplay, Rakim didn't yell, didn't curse, didn't bargain. He simply unplugged the headphones, stood up, and walked out. No noise, no meltdown, just a quiet refusal to sell out, and that's exactly why Dre's formula failed this time. Rakim showed that silence could hit harder than any verse. And here's where it gets deeper, because Eazy-E warned us about this side of Dre. Let's rewind the tape. What went down between Rakim and Dr. Dre inside that Aftermath studio wasn't just a creative clash, it was history repeating itself.
People out there know how he really was. He was a dancer. Now he's trying to live a fantasy.
Instead of just throwing shade, Eazy-E went for Dre's neck in one of the coldest diss tracks hip-hop ever heard. Let's break down the lyrics real quick. Eazy spit. All of a sudden, Dr. Dre's a G thing.
First of all, I want to start off with those studio gangsters out there. He was in NWA, and he was a producer.
So Snoop Dogg was never with you?
Nah, he was never with me.
But on his old album covers, he was a she thing. She thing! That wasn't just a cheap jab, that was a surgical strike. Eazy was flat out saying Dre was living a lie, pretending to be something he never was, and he didn't stop there. Eazy kept cutting deep. You've been a studio gangster, you ain't got a clue of what you used to do.
I don't believe nothing they say anyway. Talking about I ganked them for whatever and all that, so don't ever believe everything you hear.
Yeah, okay.
You think I forgot? Right there. That phrase, studio gangster, became a whole stamp in the culture. It called out rappers who built street images they never lived, performers dressed up as gangsters for the cameras, and Eazy made it clear. Dre was the blueprint for that fakery. Dre tried to laugh it off in interviews saying, "Don't believe anything you hear," but the damage was done. Fast forward to 2000. Dre's now the super producer of an era, signing Rakim, one of the most authentic MCs to ever bless a mic. And what does he do? He tries to dress Rakim up in the same gangster costume.
I guess he wanted me to do that, a gangster rap album, I guess, you know what I mean? And that's his formula, you know what I mean? But I thought at that point I should be doing something different.
Beats dripping with menace, hooks full of gun talk, the same script that made his empire work. But Rakim wasn't built for that. He wasn't about to fake an image for album sales. The second Dre pushed that false direction, Rakim simply walked away. No beef tracks, no shouting matches, just pure principle. And in that silence, Eazy's words came roaring back from the grave. Everything Eazy had called out, the smoke, the illusion, the manufactured persona, it was all still there. Only now, Dre wasn't clashing with a West Coast rival. He was facing a man of principle, a god MC who refused to bend for money or fear. Say what you want about Eazy-E's motives. Maybe he was being petty, maybe he was bitter. But when he called Dr. Dre a studio gangster looking back now, he wasn't lying.
The folks have not heard it because it never came out. Why did your album with Dr. Dre never get finished and not come out?
Well, me and Dre, we had two different...
Because when you try to mold a god into a gimmick, the god doesn't bend. And that's exactly why the album never happened. Let's talk about the project that could have changed the entire game. It was supposed to be called Oh My God. That title alone showed what Aftermath expected. This was meant to be explosive. Dre on the boards, Rakim on the mic. West Coast production clashing with East Coast lyricism. This wasn't just another record. It was set up to be a landmark in hip-hop history, but it never saw daylight. Not a single full-length track ever hit shelves. So what went wrong? Let's rewind. When Rakim signed to Aftermath in 2000, Dre was unstoppable. He just reinvented himself with 2001, turned Eminem into a megastar, and was laying the blueprint for 50 Cent's takeover. Everything Dre touched was going platinum. But here's the catch: Dre's system only worked when he had control. With Eminem, Dre shaped the sound from scratch. With 50 Cent, he dictated the beats, the branding, even the street narrative. But Rakim didn't need shaping. He walked into Aftermath already a fully formed legend.
We had two different, ideas of how the album was supposed to sound.
His tone, his flow, his subject matter already etched in stone. And that right there, that's where the whole problem started. So what happens when two visions just don't line up? A straight-up stalemate. Yeah, they recorded tracks, they sat in sessions, but the magic never clicked. Rumor has it some of Rakim's verses got chopped up, remixed, and even recycled into other Aftermath projects. A few scraps leaked through. The track Rakim made it onto the 8 Mile soundtrack. Another verse landed on Truth Hurts, Addictive, which Dre produced. But the real treasure? The vault reportedly holds 20 to 30 unreleased songs that nobody's ever heard. Rakim stayed loyal for 3 whole years, from 2000 to 2003, trying to bridge his soul with Dre's cinematic sound. 3 years of pushing for balance, but in the end, the weight of the standoff was too heavy. The tension, the pressure, the tug of war, it killed the project. Just like that, the most anticipated rap album of the early 2000s evaporated into thin air. No track list, no release date, no closure. Just a ghost project sealed away in the Aftermath vaults, stacked next to all the other Dre experiments that never saw daylight. But this one cut the deepest. Oh my God, could have been a masterpiece. Instead, it turned into one of hip-hop's greatest what-ifs. And here's the twist. Rakim showed that sometimes walking away is stronger than dropping a diss track. In rap, silence usually equals weakness. If someone takes a shot at you and you don't clap back, people think you folded. But Rakim flipped that entire narrative on its head. Because when Dr. Dre, the most powerful producer in the game, tried to drag him into gangster rap, tried to force him into a character that wasn't his truth, Rakim didn't bark back with bars. He didn't run to Hot 97. He didn't blast Dre on MTV. He didn't even toss subliminals on wax. That was it. And that's exactly what made the moment so powerful. In a culture where clout is currency, where attention equals survival, Rakim proved that real power doesn't always need the spotlight. Sometimes the most gangster move you can make is refusing to play the game at all. Think about it. Hip-hop is a world where artists get disrespected on camera and then drop entire mixtapes in response. Where beef is used as album promo. Where silence is usually spun as weakness. But Rakim, he didn't need the noise. He didn't have to flex his pen to prove a point because his very name was the Flex. By the time he walked into Aftermath in 2000, he was already a legend's legend. Rakim didn't owe Dre anything. If anything, Dre owed him. Every MC Dre built, Eminem, 50 Cent, The Game, they were all students of Rakim whether they admitted it or not. They studied his rhyme patterns, his breath control, his precision with language. Rakim wasn't just another artist. He was the blueprint they all borrowed from. So when Dre tried to box him into the formula, beats soaked in cinematic gun tales, fake gangsta personas, polished street drama, Rakim refused. He chose silence over submission. And that silence spoke louder than any diss ever could. It told the world he wasn't selling out his identity just to move units. Even in an era where gangsta rap ruled everything from BET to Billboard, Rakim refused to play dress up for mainstream approval. Read that again, that's conviction. Not many rappers today can claim that kind of backbone. We've seen artists flip their whole identity overnight just to chase a trend, rapping about murders they never committed, blocks they never stood on, and lives they never lived, all to sell an image.
After the Dre thing popped off, I had to come back. I went back to the East Coast. Had to get my business head together. So, I got my own label. Got my album coming out on my own label.
But Rakim, he walked away from one of the biggest platforms in music just to stay true to himself. Let that sink in. And here's the craziest part. Dre never denied it. He never clapped back, never tried to spin it because deep down he knew the truth. He knew Rakim's silence hit harder than any diss could. Anybody can run to a booth and fire shots. That's the easy way out. But walking away while knowing the press will pry, the label will panic, the fans will speculate, that takes a level of self-respect most rappers will never reach. And it rattled Dre, because let's keep it real, Dre was used to control. He molded Snoop, pushed Eminem, crafted 50's entire image. But Rakim, he wasn't moldable. He wasn't some young, hungry MC begging for a cosign. He was already carved into hip-hop's Mount Rushmore. Rakim didn't need aftermath. He didn't need Dre. He didn't need a scripted character arc. The only thing he needed, the only thing he refused to compromise, was the truth in his voice. And when Dre asked him to fake it, he walked out. No beef, no theatrics, no stage drama, just discipline. Because sometimes in hip-hop, the loudest message you can send is absolute silence. Rakim's legacy versus Dr. Dre's machine. That's the real clash.
Rakim was arguably the first person to really push the boundaries of what rapping could be and introduce complex lyrics and rhyme schemes to set hip-hop on the path that we know today.
Let's be clear, Dre built an empire. He's the architect behind some of the biggest names hip-hop has ever seen. Snoop Dogg, Eminem, 50 Cent, The Game, Kendrick Lamar. But don't get it twisted, his empire was built like a factory. Every artist that stepped through Dre's doors got reshaped, rebranded, and fine-tuned. From beats to marketing to street narratives, Dre controlled every detail. Now set that machine against Rakim, the one man who needed no makeover, no tweaking, no blueprint. Because Rakim didn't rise off packaging or gimmicks. He rose off pure skill. No viral antics, no internet beefs, just bars. Bar for bar, flow for flow. Rakim was light years ahead of his era. Back in the late 80s and early 90s, when most rappers were still stuck in Run DMC-style cadences, Rakim broke through with layered metaphors, internal rhymes, and a calm, almost godlike presence on the mic. He turned rap into something higher. The streets respected him, the thinkers admired him, and the next generation, they straight up worshipped him. Rakim wasn't just another voice. He was the teacher that every great MC studied. Even Dre knew what he had in front of him. That's why he signed Rakim in the first place. He thought, if I can run this legend through my formula, I'll create the greatest rap album of all time. But Dre underestimated one thing. Rakim was never built to be plugged into a system. His art didn't come from gangsta tales or label strategies. It came from truth, knowledge, and spiritual depth. That's not something you can just sprinkle over gun bars and club beats. And that was the real clash. This wasn't sound versus sound. It was principle versus product. Rakim's legacy was rooted in authenticity, in shaping hip-hop's very mind. Dre's machine was built for dominance, designed to move units and manufacture stars. One force was timeless, the other tactical. And when they collided, the machine blinked because Rakim couldn't be mass-produced. He wasn't created for hip-hop, he helped create it. So what happened to the music they made? That's the million-dollar question. If Rakim and Dr. Dre really spent years working together, where are the tracks? Why did one of the most hyped collaborations in rap history fade into one of hip-hop's biggest mysteries? Let's lay it out. When Rakim signed with Aftermath in 2000, the announcement shook the industry. This wasn't just another rookie deal. This was the God MC linking with the man who redefined the West Coast sound. Fans expected a classic, a culture-shifting masterpiece, a fusion of East Coast intellect and West Coast sonic power. The album even had a title, Oh My God. And according to Rakim himself, plenty of music was recorded. Some say 20 tracks. Others swear it was closer to 30. Full sessions, verses, hooks, even completed songs. But that right there, the direction, that's what buried the album. Dre came in with a vision. Dark, cinematic, street-heavy. Think The Chronic 2001, think Get Rich or Die Trying.
He was rapping so far ahead of everyone else at the time that I don't think there's ever been a rapper with a bigger gap.
He wanted Rakim to fit that mold, but Rakim walked in with something way deeper. He wanted to elevate, to speak on spirituality, responsibility, higher truths, not drown in murder fantasies or gangsta fairy tales. That philosophical crash didn't spark fireworks, it caused a slow implosion. Month after month, year after year, tracks were recorded, then shelved. Beats were built, then stripped down. Verses were laid, then erased. And while the clock ticked louder, Aftermath's focus shifted.
One of the greatest things about Rakim to me was he would use words that you've heard this word rhyme before, but it'd almost be like girl and world. You'd expect him to rhyme that, and he's rhyming plural and rural.
50 Cent stormed onto the scene. Eminem was exploding into the biggest artist on the planet. The money was rolling in, but Rakim's project kept getting shoved further back in the line. And then, just like that, it was gone. No announcement, no press release, no farewell statement. Just silence. A few crumbs slipped through the cracks. Rakim on the 8 Mile soundtrack gave us a glimpse of what could have been. Classic Rakim delivery wrapped in Dre's polished sound. A short feature on Truth Hurts. Addictive reminded everyone a legend was still alive and sharp. But even those moments felt incomplete, unfinished. And here's the wildest part. Those songs are still locked inside the Aftermath vaults to this day. Not a single leak, not even a snippet. You'd think by now a demo or a rough radio rip would have slipped out, but no. Dre runs one of the tightest ships in music. He's legendary for keeping unreleased tracks buried. Even his own project Detox turned into myth. And that means those Rakim sessions, they may never see daylight. And that stings, because in another world, at another time, we could have had a classic album that redefined the culture. Instead, all we're left with are stories, whispers, rumors, and a single question that's echoed for more than 20 years. What if? What if Rakim had bent just a little? What if Dre had loosened his formula? What if the industry had given this album the space it needed? We'll never know. But one thing's certain. Whatever Rakim and Dre created in those sessions is still sitting somewhere. On a hard drive, in a vault, in some studio server, just collecting dust. Maybe, just maybe, it'll surface one day. Until then, Oh My God remains hip-hop's lost scroll, the album that almost was. Because when legends cross paths, even Dre has to stop and listen. Rakim didn't need chart-topping singles every summer, didn't need scandals or viral stunts to prove his worth. His pen was enough, and the gods of rap took notes. Jay-Z has admitted it. Eminem, in countless interviews, has credited Rakim as one of his biggest inspirations. Even Dr. Dre, years after the Aftermath fallout, still speaks on Rakim with deep respect, because Rakim didn't just inspire rappers, he inspired architects of culture. The very people who reached the top still look back and point to Rakim as the reason they even started climbing, and that's the real lesson. Sometimes holding on to your truth is far more powerful than chasing the spotlight. Oh My God never dropped. The songs may never surface, but the message, that's eternal. Real recognizes real. And Rakim proved that even in silence, he still speaks the loudest. Some people walk into fame, others walk away and become legends. So what do you think? Was walking away Rakim's greatest move, or did hip-hop lose out on what could have been a masterpiece? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if you want more deep dives like this.